The ballot initiative to legalize marijuana in California will not be voted on until November. But it's of such importance, of such interest, we decided to ask about it several months early in order to begin to establish a trend line so that as we go through the summer and fall, we'll get a sense as to if or how voter opinion changes over the course of the campaign.
Well, it looks like supporters of legalizing marijuana have their work cut out for them. The marijuana proposal that's on the November ballot is ahead, but only somewhat, fairly narrow margin. It's not quite at 50% support. Generally, what you find in ballot initiative campaigns is that measures go downhill as the campaign goes along and people come up with more reasons to oppose a measure. So if you're backing an initiative, you usually want to start out well above 50%, and marijuana legalization is not there. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't win, but it does mean that they have a tough campaign ahead of them.
In addition to asking voter opinions on the marijuana initiative and voter attitudes about the arguments for and against the initiative's passage, we also asked voters if they tried marijuana, either medicinally or recreationally. And we found that just over a third of Californians had tried marijuana, or at least willing to admit to pollsters that they had tried it. And the biggest skew in these numbers, not surprisingly, was that voters who had tried marijuana were much more likely to support the initiative than voters who hadn't.
The marijuana initiative does better among men than among women. And supporters of the initiative have said that they think the key audience that they need to win over is moms. And our survey provides evidence for that. They're not doing particularly well among women, and particularly women in their 40s and 50s. Mothers of teenagers, perhaps, are skeptical of the idea of legalizing marijuana, and that's going to be a key group that supporters of legalization would have to win over in order to get this passed in November.
The question of marijuana, particularly as it relates to this ballot initiative, is less a political than a cultural question. We gave voters the arguments for and against the initiative, and hearing the economic argument, hearing the law enforcement and public safety argument didn't change any minds at all. People have a sense on whether they think this is something that ought to be done or not, and that's based less on political attitude than it is on personal experience.
One of the big arguments that supporters of marijuana legalization make is that if you legalize marijuana, you're able to tax it, you could bring in a lot of revenue that would help the state budget. It seems by and large that that issue is not helping very much. What we find is that basically those who support legalization say that they think that there would be revenue. Those who oppose legalization are skeptical of it. It doesn't look like the revenue argument itself is moving the electorate. California already makes marijuana legal for medical reasons. The legalization proposal that's on the ballot in November would go further and make marijuana legal for basically any reason. And it may be that what we're seeing is that voters figure they've gone far enough that medical marijuana is where they want to stay.
The other reason that the marijuana initiative faces an uphill fight, even though it's currently leading in our poll, is that leading politicians of both parties have come out against it. Not only the Republican candidates for governor, but Jerry Brown has come out against it. You're seeing most law enforcement against it. And while you wouldn't write off an initiative on an issue that's as volatile as this one, it seems to me that when you see that type of support lining up from the leadership of both parties, it's not impossible, but it makes it a more challenging hill to climb.